Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Brum, Energy Storage Manager here at Soligent, the largest pure-play solar distributor in the Americas. We thank you for being here, and we thank our partners, Sol Ark, best inverters in the universe. We're going to talk a lot about the functionality and capability of Sol Ark inverters today, all available at Soligent. Click on the link below to find out more. Also as well, John Cromer, a world-renowned renewable energy enthusiast, also a specialist at Sol Ark that assists us in our training and our knowledge. Thank you so much for being here as well, John. Nolan Granzin from EndurEnergy, safe, long life lithium iron phosphate battery, available here at Soligent as well. Again, click on the link below. Nolan is joining us today for our educational opportunity as well. By the way, as a part of our Soligent storage webinar series, this class today, taught by Sol Ark and EndurEnergy, will be available on demand at the Soligent YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out, like, subscribe, and comment down below so that we can contact you. Nolan and his team willing to have a personalized training for you and your sales team if they want to have a chance to dive deeper into what we're discussing today, more customized and personalized for you and your sales team. Thanks so much for being here for this great educational opportunity today. Our captain of the ship, John Cromer, take it over, my friend.
All right, so we're going to have Nolan introduce EndurEnergy.
All right, well, thanks, Josh. Thanks, John. Appreciate y'all having me out. Soligent is one of our premier partners and distributors, and obviously Sol Ark is as well, so we're really excited for today and really excited to show y'all some of our products. So on the call, we also have Ricardo on the call for any technical questions and support. We should have our SVP, Phil McIver, and Paul Buckwalter, I think, might be joining as well. He's our East Coast sales rep. So the main takeaways that we want to get through today are the fact that we are delivering high voltage batteries. We're delivering these batteries. We have done our first install, the first ever install with a Sol Ark 60K inverter. That was done a couple months ago. We're delivering now. We have things up and rolling. And we want to really focus on that our low voltage batteries on the residential side are EMP hardened. So certified EMP hardened, the only LFP battery available today that is EMP hardened. So these are our three main batteries. We have on our residential side the low voltage ESP 5100. This is a 5K battery, 5 kilowatt hours, EMP hardened, LFP on the residential side, or on the residential and C&I side. So we have our ESP 5K HL. So it's 5 kilowatt hours. It can work both in low or high voltage, single skew, and it works with all of Sol Ark's inverters. So from the high voltage 30K, 60K, all the way down to the low voltage 15, 12, 8, 5. On the utility side, we have the ESP 14000. So the main features that I want to focus on are just our efficiency. So 6,000 cycles, rated at 90% depth of discharge, standard 10-year warranty for up to 70% capacity at the end of that 10 years. We only use grade A LFP cells, so no recycled cells, and 100% end-of-the-line battery testing. No random spot testing. We have 100% end-of-the-line testing as they leave the factory. We have BMS battery management system built into each battery, so easy for over-the-air updates, monitoring the battery, troubleshooting. Everything can be done remotely. All of our data is held stateside, so you don't have to worry about data being held overseas. All of our data is housed here in our data centers in the United States. One of the biggest things I always want to focus on is support. So we have top quality support 7 days a week. We actually share a supporting team with Sol Ark, and we have our own support as well. So you're able to, call that line whether you want to spec out a project ahead of time, you want to utilize our engineering for help with some single line drawings, planning out sizing a project, or if you're out in the install and you just have some questions on the fly, you have a single number to call to answer your questions for both the inverter and the battery. So like I mentioned, here's kind of our residential side. I'm going to briefly touch on this before we get into C&I. These are our outdoor rated enclosures. Most of these are used on the residential side, but they fit both our low voltage and high voltage battery. So we have the BU10, which is 10 kilowatt hours, 2 batteries, 15, 3 batteries for 15 kilowatt hours, and our BU20, 4 batteries for 20 kilowatt hours, and 30 for 30 kilowatt hours, 6 batteries. So all of these are outdoor rated. They include all the cables and connections for an easy install with a Sol Ark inverter. You don't have to worry about mounting something onto a wall, assembling a bunch of different parts. These are ground mount, come fully assembled, slide the batteries in, plug the cables in, set your dip switches, and you're in and out in 30 minutes. We also have our integrated battery units. So these allow you to have the Sol Ark and the batteries all in one unit. We have that for the IBU10, which is 10 kilowatt hours, so 2 batteries below, and then the IBU20 for 20 kilowatt hours. These work with the Sol Ark 12K, 8K, and 5K. Here's some great examples of some of our residential installs. Most of these are with 15Ks. You can see in the middle, those are 2 BU20s, so 40 kilowatt hours. On the right there, you have more of our slimmer design with the BU15s. So those are 2 BU15s, 15 kilowatt hours each for a total of 30 kilowatt hours. Some more examples. Here's our IBU with the Sol Ark right above the batteries. And then onto our newest product, the ESP5K HL. So like I mentioned before, this is a single SKU high and low voltage battery. This one is fully certified with UL 1973, 9540 and 9540A are coming in the next few weeks. CEC and SGIP. And we're also going to run this through EMP testing as well. Right now, EMP hardened is only on our low voltage battery, the ESP5100. But this one we are going to run through the testing as well. So like I mentioned before, we have gone through our first install with the Sol Ark 60K, the first ever install with the Sol Ark 60K inverter. This is for a cellular company out in California. We did 12 ESP 5K HL batteries with a Sol Ark 60K. Here's the example of that as a single line, and Paul Buckwalter is out there with a couple of the EPC groups that were working on this one. And then here's another example of one we did just a couple weeks ago with a big box retailer. This one's actually attached to some EV chargers, so a full off-grid solution with EV chargers with our new ESP 5K HL high voltage batteries and Sol Ark 60K inverters. So these units, it's a containerized solution for 130 kilowatt hours. And then I want to touch on the BCU. So our BCU allows you to string together up to 400 kilowatt hours on the low voltage side and up to 640 kilowatt hours on the high voltage side. Some more of our racks. So we have our new R12 and R6 racks. Respectively, they hold 6 and 12 batteries for 30 kilowatt hours and up to 60 kilowatt hours. So these are more of a server style racking, mainly for indoor installs or inside of containerized units. But these just allow you to get a lot of power and a low footprint. Here's another version of our R12. This is kind of the main version we're going to be using for the most part. And then just some of our integration with Sol Ark. So we've been testing with Sol Ark on the high voltage side for about 1.5 years now. We're the most tested high voltage battery that pairs with their inverters. And this is an example of what's going on in their battery lab. Testing on our end, we've been testing for a long time on our end. Series, parallel, we're constantly running different tests, stress tests, and testing the amount of batteries that we can get in a single string. Wanted to show some great examples of the ways you could set up installations with a Sol Ark 30 or 60K. So here you can see a Sol Ark 30K with 60 kilowatt hours. So 2 examples here. On the top left, you can see 2 BU30s. So 30 kilowatt hours each there for a total of 60 kilowatt hours. And on the middle bottom, you can see the two R6 units. So same amount of power, just in a different design. Here's an example of a Sol Ark 30K with the R12. So two R12s for 120 kilowatt hours. You can kind of see in there we can have optional bus barring in there as well. And here's a Sol Ark 60K with four 30Ks for 120 kilowatt hours. So this would be great for an outdoor install, since everything here is outdoor certified. And then two R12s with the Sol Ark 60K as well. 120 kilowatt hours. And then I just want to touch on that we can also do complete containerized solutions. So if your client wants a whole turnkey solution, they need a container for 200 kilowatt hours. They need it to have the Sol Arks in there, all the components from fire suppression, lighting, load centers, air conditioning, heating if it's in a cold climate. We can do that. Challenge us, utilize our engineering. We'll put together a single line. We can draw it all together, and we can really just deliver it fully installed, drop it down from the crane, and you're good to go. On the utility scale side, we have our ESP BU 200 coming out in the next few months. So this is several of the ESP 14,000 batteries. This will also be utilized in a containerized solution on a regular basis. One example of that is the container for 3.2 megawatt hours. So this will be a 40-foot container, big on the utility scale side. We actually started as a utility scale company and kind of moved into residential and now into commercial as well. So now we're able to offer on all levels. We're doing our test demo station here in Allen, Texas, right outside of Dallas, at the Sol Ark headquarters. So we're going to have a container of batteries out there powering part of the office loads here, and they're going to be linked up to some very large solar trackers in the parking lot as well, and some EV chargers. So we're really excited about that. We're getting that underway in the next month or so. And thank you. That's about it. Feel free to ask some questions. Join us at RE Plus in Las Vegas on September 10th through 14th. We'll be out there, booth 286. Looking forward to meeting all of you, answering some questions, and helping you out with some projects.
Yeah. So,
and friendly reminder, everybody, EndurEnergy, they're actually they share an office, the same building as Sol Ark. So, as John can speak to here, and Nolan, you guys are very integrated together. You're not just a supplier that happens to work with one another. You actually share the same roof in a sense.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that we are more than willing to extend to any of our battery partners to streamline warehousing and office operations as well. But I like that Endure actually takes us up on the offer, because that means we can see their operations, and it helps installers overcome the brand fatigue of trying to say, well, of all the different battery options that are out there, who do I know, or who can I trust? And Endure, by being willing to take advantage of some of our giant warehousing space and facilities operations, that helps build trust between companies. And that also means that installers can implement them in the field and know that they have a lot of support behind them. Now, Endure comes from utility scale storage, but I think that the beginning of the presentation with the residential really didn't kind of highlight some of the unique residential aspects of your product. And I'm very excited for the low voltage, high voltage battery to come out, because that means that installers who, are primarily rooted in commercial but do a few residential projects, they'll just have one battery for all inverter models, whether it be the
Yep.
15K residential or the 30K three phase. But your cabinet options, to me, are very unique to the industry, because most battery manufacturers, our partners or otherwise, when it comes to battery cabinets, they only have one option, or maybe they have an indoor and an outdoor option. But you actually have a flexible cabinet options. You have one that is very great for density and can hold a decent number of batteries, but you also have a thin profile cabinet option that hugs that extra foot between the side of the garage and the wall of the garage in a very thin profile manner. So you have different cabinet options for
Yep.
flexible site selection. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point. The cabinets are just really easy to install, and they really are a slim profile, especially that BU15 where 3 batteries are stacked on their side on top of each other for 15 kilowatt hours. Those are about as slim as it can get for that amount of power. And we're really excited about the BU30. Be slightly thicker than the BU15, but to be able to pack 30 kilowatt hours in that size for indoor outdoor installs, super easy for installers.
You take the Sol Ark 15K, it has 2 battery ports. And so you put those thin profile cabinets on either side of the Sol Ark inverter and land on both battery ports, do your combining there, kind of as that picture on the right indicates. And, that's about as energy dense in terms of being able to fit that much inverter power and that much battery capacity within a 6-foot span up against the wall of the garage. That's about as dense as it gets. It's a very simple project compared to some of our competition.
Yeah, and you always have the ability to add more batteries later on as well.
And I think without getting too much into revealing your secrets, but as far as EMP hardening goes, there are technical reasons why you can't just EMP harden any battery or any battery management system, and yet Endure was able to pass the EMP hardening or the EMI interference testing that we subject our inverters to. And the reason for that is quality components. And I know that there are different kinds of battery management systems. I don't know if you can get into any of those details, but can you talk a little bit as to, I don't know, quality philosophy on the inside of your battery design, or anything around that topic?
Yeah, I could get a little bit. So we're first and foremost a technology company. So we built our BMS with the Sol Arks in mind. And with that, we went the extra mile to make sure that they had the capability to be EMP hardened. And we were excited when they passed the test, because that was what we wanted. So we were able to get the EMP hardening with the Sol Ark test. And
when you get into higher quality BMS internal components, sometimes the power consumption of those batteries increases rather than decreases. And sometimes, almost like a amped up sound system, the higher end it is, the more power it can draw. But with BMS systems, you really have to go the full mile to have a very energy efficient BMS system using high quality internal components. So without cracking the egg open and showing you what's inside, I can say I'm very impressed with the quality and energy efficiency and energy density of the Endure battery. And on top of that, for those customers who are prepper minded and want protection against EMP pulses, EMI interference. Now you have a complete system where it's not just the inverter, but the batteries, and we'll talk a little bit about solar panel EMP hardening options as well, so that you can sell the whole power generation station as an EMP hardened system.
Well, and then also I want to add, just to throw this in for anyone that is in our audience today, if you don't already know some of these things we're talking about, some of the terminology that we're speaking about. So EMP, electromagnetic pulse, an EMP blast can come from a nuclear attack. It can come from a solar flare, which we get. They disrupt satellites and some of our technology every day, but there could be a big solar flare blast that comes out of nowhere and knocks a lot of our technology and electronics and fries it basically back into the Stone Age. And so having an EMP hardened inverter system along with the panels, and now with this energy storage that's lithium iron phosphate option from EndurEnergy, that allows you to continue to be independent in an EMP event where you still have independent power, not connected to the grid. And those are some of the survival mindsets that we're seeing out there with some customers today, doomsday preppers, etc., where they want to have that independence in case something happens. They might be worried about North Korea or Russia. I'm praying that nothing like that ever happens, but if it did and you were in an area where you survived, you potentially would still have power, which could be worth its weight in gold in an emergency. But in addition, back in the 1800s, I think it was called the Kensington event. It's where all the telegraph lines across the entire world fried to a crisp because of a big solar flare event that happened. We're due for one. And if it happens, you need to have EMP hardened systems, which are available from Sol Ark, EndurEnergy for the energy storage, and all of those products are available right here at Soligent. To find out more, email storage@soligent.net.
Okay,
Yes.
so let me add a little bit more information on this EMP hardening process and what installers need to consider. First is that especially with Endure having a product line that can go from residential into commercial, is that I actually find that these two markets are closer together rather than further apart in terms of the reasons why. Kinds of commercial customers who are buying solar battery projects, they're doing it for battery backup and reliability reasons, in addition, as much as cost savings reasons. And what we EMP harden, what we test for, is the military standard for substations and power equipment. And so, if you're talking with a facilities manager and he seems to have a mindset for not just protection against power outages, but lightning, and puts into a mindset of like, well, I want the very best. Well, you can sell him a standard that has been equipment that has been tested to military grade substation qualification. And Sol Ark, if you want to know more about this stuff, Sol Ark, if you just Google Sol Ark EMP hardening, Sol Ark publishes its EMP hardened test results on its website. So you can, if you're an electrical engineer and you want to learn more, just go to Sol Ark's website, look at the EMP hardened test, and it's a little bit out of my area of expertise, but there are standards for it. The one item to take special note of is the solar panels, right? Because it's like, well, if I go through this EMP event and my battery's protected, so I've been with Endure, and my inverter's protected, well, does that really matter if all the panels on my roof are fried? And so there's two options um, when you're selling an EMP hardened system, and not all of the Sol Ark inverters are EMP hardened. In fact, our standard inverter is not. You have to make sure you're seeking out and specifically purchasing the EMP hardened model of the inverter, and that option will come with ferrites to snap around the existing solar panels that you use to protect those junction boxes against EMI surges. If you happen to buy an EMP hardened solar panel rather than bring your own solar panel, this will already be included inside of that junction box. So it just makes they're a little bit more rare, but if you want to plan EMP projects, just keep in mind that there is you need an EMP hardened battery system, you need an EMP hardened inverter system, and either you need EMP hardened solar modules, which you get through Sol Ark distributors, or you will snap these ferrite cables around your solar MC4 jumper cables during installation. Otherwise, that's it. Other than snapping these things around the solar panel, everything else is already built into the inverter unit, the EMP hardened inverter unit, as well as the indoor batteries. So I was actually kind of looking through some old YouTube videos and Sol Ark blog posts and Sol Ark histories, and I found a YouTube video of Scott Hunt with Practical Preppers going all the way back into 2016. So it was one of his first YouTube videos, and he was talking about how he had been looking for a very long time for an inverter manufacturer selling product that had any kind of standard or testing for EMP events in its product, period, and that kind of connected him with Sol Ark all the way back before our 8K inverter model was even on the market. And so, if anyone knows Practical Preppers with Scott Hunt, that's kind of the target market. Although for the customers who want the very best, that would be, that can apply to businesses too. So Sol Ark's inverters, one thing I like about them is it's very obvious that they build upon the field experience gained from the prior model. We don't throw out, the baby with the bath water whenever we rev up a product line. The 8K looks very similar to the 12K. The 12K looks very similar to the 15K. Sol Ark actually moved offices in 2021 to a 100,000 square foot facility, but then we just kept growing, and by 2023 we had kind of outgrown our office, and so we had to move again. And so this time we say, well, we're going to continue to grow, but we're not going to move, a year or two from now, because it is disruptive to operations. Every inverter that we send into distribution, we open up and inspect inside Sol Ark headquarters. So we have a gigantic warehouse for that, for distribution, inspection, firmware flashing, RMA and repair work. And then we also have an office building, about a block away as well. So 100,000 square feet wasn't good enough. We needed 300,000 square feet. Everything's big in Texas. It makes it very easy to start and scale up a business. We've been doing it for years, and our current office building, while we're not quite there yet, it's sized for 500 employees. And that while we are still not quite as big as Enphase and Tesla, it's real U.S. presence, it's real U.S. employees, dozens and dozens and dozens of technical support inside the office. that's what solar installers want in a company. They want to get through to support. They want to know that it's not just endless, opaque supply chain. Uh, so Sol Ark with its new facility, where we're posed for rapid growth, up to 500 employees, and anyway, we do on-site training. So if you do want to send your install crews down to get some hands-on experience with our product or with Endure batteries, you could do that just north of Dallas, Texas. So you see our product lines. We started with the 8K. We actually kind of went in reverse and made a smaller version, the 5K. The 12K was pretty much the bigger brother of the 8K, kind of replaced the 8K. The 15K was an even larger version of the 12K. The 12K was still a traditional inverter in the sense that it protected a critical loads panel. The 15K has some unique features built into it that allow it to back up a full 200 amp service, albeit with 12 kW of power at night and 15 kW of power during the day. That's on or off the grid. So a little bit of a different feature set than the 12K. This year, we launched the 30K and the 60K. Those are not 48 volt inverters. Those are high voltage inverters. So it created a little bit of, what comes first, high voltage inverters or high voltage batteries conundrum. High voltage batteries are, high voltage. It's a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more hairy than 48 volt platforms. So, we're sticking it with the 3-phase commercial industrial line. It'll simplify your wiring and cabling at high voltage and, deliver more industrial level power than what you can get out of a 48 volt system. So now the Sol Ark inverter line scales from small off-grid residential all the way up to C&I industrial. And, Endure is experienced in delivering shipping containers worth of batteries to the projects who need it. Looking at our various residential models, fairly well ranged. I think probably the biggest advancement was between the 12K and the 15K. So when we moved from the 8K to the 12K, we made the AC output power a little bit larger, about 1 kilowatt more. But then we gave it, what I call a 3 kilowatt DC bonus, which says that even if you're discharging, from the battery at 9 kW, you still have an additional 3 kW of charging power that will be going into the battery bank. And so if you had a 12K solar array or 15K solar array on the 12K, as long as there was room in the battery bank, it would not clip the production. It would keep charging that battery up, even if you were selling back at 9K to the grid or to the load. And that sounded like a lot of verbal gymnastics. It kind of is. The 3 kW DC bonus, the net effect is it lets you charge the batteries a little bit faster if you're also planning to net meter or have heavy loads. But really, it's a 9 kW AC continuous output. So when we came out with a 15K, we said, well, we're not gonna. We've learned our lesson on that. We're really not going to emphasize any kind of DC side bonus capability of the inverter. Instead, what you get with the 15K is a true 15K AC nameplate output capacity during the day. And so that's for daytime net metering, or just, you live off grid and you need more power during the day because that's when you want to use your power tools, or you're in a backup situation and you're not used to losing power because you're used to being grid tied. Having a few extra kilowatts in the south to run those heavy air conditioning loads during the day is good. AC power is useful. Now at nighttime, there's a 3 kilowatt AC output bonus that comes from the solar side of the inverter, and that goes away at night. At nighttime, you'll have 12 kilowatts output from the battery bank itself. The 12K and the 15K do parallel stacking. The 5K and the 8K do not. One kind of new announcement that's pretty exciting is we now have 15-year extended warranty options on our inverter line. So you buy those extended warranty options through the distributor. And so all the standard warranty on all our inverters, and commercial has jumped around a little bit too, but we've standardized it. It's 10 years on all of our inverters, 5 years extended warranty option that you buy through the distributor. So our commercial line is new. It's pretty special, especially at the small commercial level. So there really are not solar inverters. I have a timer set on this thing. Let me turn it off real quick. There really aren't. I'll just go to the next. I'll just leave it like this. There really aren't that many 208 3-phase out of the box inverters on the market. Most of the commercial industrial inverters on the market are 480, and you will lose power or have to use an inefficient transformer to get down to 208 3-phase. Alternately, you could take a bunch of residential single-phase inverters and stack them in groups of 3 to get 208 output. And there's, slightly more you can do with that if you want to get into imbalanced loads. But what we wanted was the simplicity that we had brought to residential installs. We wanted that to be available to commercial installers so that they could have a little bit of backup power on site, meet any kind of storage mandates that they were encountering. And let's see. Having a little trouble getting my slideshow to come back up. So let me just go back up here. And so the 208 30K delivers 208 3-phase right out of the box with no transformers, with one inverter, and it has the features that you know and love about the residential line. So that means the controller is built in. Let me see how I can turn out the controller is built in. So you got demand management and you have time of use metering controllers built into the unit. You have the same 200 amp grid pass through that we have with residential that gives you full access to your 200 amp grid power when the grid is available. That feature comes with the 30K and the 60K for that matter. So as long as you're looking at your CNI load bank and it has a 200 amp breaker on it, you can put one inverter onto that system, give it 30K or 60K of backup power, and while the grid is online, you still have the full amount of power that 200 amp interconnection can give you. Yeah.
Hey, John. So for the demand charge relief and time of use functionality for this and the residential, what do our customers need to provide? What green button data, 15-minute interval data, or What exactly does
Yeah,
Solark need from us and our
the
customers
time
to
of use
assist them with these
settings and the
projects?
control options that come with a Solark inverter are usually sufficient for the project. What I mean by that is if you do have, say like Energy Hub and you have a virtual power plant control that you need to plug into it, our inverters are capable of that, and we do have some integrations with some partners like Energy Hub, for third-party controller management. But for most behind the meter projects, including net metering 3.0, you don't need any third party controllers. You can just use the controller and grid relay and auto disconnect that come in the box. So our demand manager is simple. It's when you go above a certain demand threshold, the battery bank will discharge and keep that demand down. The time of use controller is seasonal. And so you can program it for the entire year and not have to, as the seasons change, go back and reprogram the inverter. But for example, the hardest time of use metering option that I know of in the country right now is California with net metering 3.0. And with net metering 3.0, you have, a combination of peak and off peak rates in the winter and peak and off peak rates in the summer, and then also an export incentive between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. You can just program the system by hour of the day for 3 different seasons of the year, weekend and weekday. Just tell the system how you want it to behave, and it'll behave that way. And what I like about that is that after you commission the project, and this will get worse as net metering 3.0 in California ramps up in particular, there's going to be a lot of anxiety around not knowing how your system works, where with these battery incentives, and if they follow the California model, instead of getting like traditional net metering where every day you sell back to the grid and you get a credit and then that offsets your bill, in California's model, they say, well, we're not going to pay you hardly anything 10 months out of the year for your export. But if between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., you take a solar charged battery, we'll allow you to discharge it into the grid, and we'll pay you 5 times the retail price of electricity during that time frame. And so it's kind of sets up a stressful situation for the customer, because normally they're getting a net metered credit every single day, but now they're getting 90% of their system value for exported energy in a 2-hour window in the month of September. And so if that isn't readily apparent to a customer, they're going to start calling you and say, well, I can't tell in your user interface how the system works. And so it's a big challenge to have a simple to use user interface that also gives you granular control and allows you to tell the system what to do however you want it to do. They're kind of conflicting odds with each other. I know when Solark first came to market, it was so much more simple than its predecessors that installers said, wow, this is the easiest to use inverter system ever. Now when you go with, say, like an Enphase or a Tesla system, they may appear more easy or more basic, but they don't allow as granular control as the Solark does. And so what was really nice with the Solark controller is when net metering 3.0 came out, we didn't have to change anything about our software or control scheme. It's just, no, you pull up the time of use settings, you tell it to sell back to the grid between 6 and 8 p.m., and you're good to go. So very, very simple, but very powerful. When I was running tech support, and I did a lot of tech support calls for a different company, but we were using Solark inverters primarily. What I liked about the Solark inverter is on its LCD screen, I could just tell the customer, okay, you're having problems right now. Go in front of the inverter, tap on the screen, go to the battery settings menu and take a picture of what you see with your cell phone. And from that, I could verify their system settings. And most of the time, it was a settings issue. And they could just say, okay, well, your generator's not working because the generator charge checkbox isn't checked. So just check that box and you'll be on your way. Now, Sol Ark does have online monitoring, and all the system settings are configurable through the internet. The key point here is you have both options. Sometimes it's easier to take a customer call, they're having problems, just tell them to go in front of the inverter. You can figure out what's going on with the inverter by using the touchscreen interface. Alternately, if the system is connected to the internet and the internet is set up, you can just remote log in and get a bunch of diagnostics that way. So, in your vast majority of cases, including C&I cases, you're not going to need an additional controls company to be involved with Sol Ark when it comes to, say, time of use metering or demand management or grid incentives such as net metering 3.0. Our commercial line, and keep in mind, Endure is one of our very few high voltage battery partners. So we have a lot of 48-volt battery partners. High voltage is more complicated, and we will not have as many high voltage battery partners as we do at the 48-volt format. But with our high voltage line, one very unique value is how much solar you can AC couple to the unit. Keep in mind that these units have an oversized grid port with that 200 amp pass through, and our gen port is also large, and the gen port can accommodate AC coupling. And on the 30K and the 60K, the AC coupled capability is quite large. So if you already have existing solar and you've done kind of the cover the rooftop philosophy with a commercial site, let's say you just love Solar Edge and you only do commercial Solar Edge, but you want to add batteries to that commercial Solar Edge project. Well, you can go and click on a Sol Ark 60K, and that can have up to 125 kW AC coupled solar array that lands directly onto its controlled gen port. On top of that, if you added 250 kW array, well, you could do it with as small as 2 Sol Ark 60Ks, and that would give you, 250 kW of AC coupling, and it would give you 120 kW of demand management or net metering export capability or backup power capability, however you see fit. So very extreme AC coupling capability that'll make retrofitting commercial solar arrays very easy. It still does DC coupling, very robust, large, DC coupled options. If you're doing an expansion project, if you have existing solar on site, but you want to add some more solar onto maybe a section of the roof that you didn't use or couldn't use, but now you can do both. You can do AC plus DC coupling. So we're starting to kind of expand that capability of having high interconnections and that additional high amperage gen port that serves multiple purposes. We still in this line, it's an all-in-one line with that oversized grid pass-through. In backup mode, it'll do 30K or 60K of backup power. 2 battery ports, and that can make it very convenient and easy to parallel stack batteries, do system expansion. So, what I want to talk about now is why hybrid inverters are important and why they're growing in market share and why some of our competitors have chosen to, if not copy us, at least follow us into this hybrid inverter trend. And so a hybrid inverter, it doesn't provide absolutely everything you need. If you need rapid shutdown compliance up on the rooftop, we have a SunSpec compliant with this. So I think that, AP Systems is a very popular option now. Tigo is also popular. Many installers choose just to stay with AC coupled microinverters, and that's fine. You can AC couple to the Sol Ark too. We are working on a DC optimizer product line, although we don't want to do that with too much momentum without much field testing. And so as we get into field testing our DC optimizers, the release schedule for the DC optimizers drags out a little bit. So optimizers will likely not be available for wide release until next year. So for the time being, rapid shutdown, stick with your preferred rapid shutdown solution, whether it's rapid shutdown only, which I really like, or DC side optimization, which finance companies like because you also get the monitoring. Or just going with AC coupled microinverters, that works fine too. Now the Sol Ark inverters are large. The 15K is large enough to back up a home with a single air conditioner unit and other devices. Now, if you want to back up multiple air conditioner units, in the past, you've had to get into multiple inverters. You could alternately consider load control and do more with less. Just have those air conditioners run at separate times. Sometimes different homes have different air conditioned zones, and they don't need to air condition the whole house during a backup emergency. The solar side for DC coupled solar for Sol Ark follows that let's do it large, let's make our components robust and have fewer problems mentality. We have 3 MPPTs in the residential line. The commercial line has 4. But these MPPTs are what I call full-sized MPPTs. And what I mean by that is every MPPT circuit is the same amperage. All 3 MPPTs are 26 amps each. And that means you can parallel solar circuits onto them, so it can accommodate up to 6 solar circuits. Now, if you do the math and you look at how many solar panels you can fit on 6 circuits, you're like, well, that's way more than 15K. We say a maximum DC capability of 19K. It's like, well, you could keep going up, and it's like, well, what you get with the 6 solar inputs is flexibility. You can use lower cost, lower efficiency modules in addition to high efficiency modules. You can divide the array across multiple roof surfaces instead of being very constrained on larger solar arrays by where you can place them. So I've looked at string sizing for Sol Ark inverters, and I've looked at string sizing for other 12 kilowatt hybrid inverters that, they'll say they have 3 MPPTs, but 2 are smaller than the other. The constraints you get with the circuit sizing will limit your module selection, and they'll limit your rooftop layouts as well, unless you have those full-sized MPPTs. So with Sol Ark, no matter what module you're using, no matter what your roof looks like, you have very flexible options, which means that you don't have to, use a different product for a different job. You can use one product for all job sites successfully. The battery port on the Sol Ark is 2 battery ports, not 1. And so you might want to think about your paralleling strategy. In the past, if you had 4 or 5 kilowatt hour batteries, you might parallel them all to one bus bar and then bring one set of conductors out towards the inverter. Instead, you might want to use, Y combiners or smaller bus bars and keep two batteries in one group and two batteries in another group. Maybe using the two battery ports on the Sol Ark as the combiner for your two battery groups. And so you have a little bit more flexibility with your batteries there. The other thing is you have battery partners. When I think about my television remote, when I'm watching TV, I flip it over out the back of it, the batteries are removable. When the batteries go dead, I can throw them away, put in new batteries. When you have the batteries built into the inverter unit, you lose that swappability. You're kind of wed at the hip to your inverter manufacturer, who's also your battery manufacturer, and we might run into end of life issues where the inverter still works, but the battery's ready to be replaced. And how do you do that if they're the one and the same? Especially if they're 400-pound boxes that you can't pick up and move. So, being able to have battery partner options means that you can deliver the same kind of user experience to the customer, because every customer gets a Sol Ark inverter. But the battery market is very fluid right now. And, you might be deciding that you don't like your existing battery partner, you want to try another battery partner out. That is an advantage of the Sol Ark. You can always stay with the most up-to-date feature set in terms of battery BMSs and battery features. One of the most overlooked aspects of the Sol Ark inverter is the 100 amp GIN port. Now, this is the port where you would AC couple microinverters for your solar array. But if you were going to use the DC coupling feature of the Sol Ark and not go with AC coupled solar, that additional port solves a lot of design challenges that you might not have thought of before. So if you're not using it, what I would say is that's where you're going to land your EV charger in the future. So if you want to be EV ready, or you're not going to use that GIN port, and you don't know how to pitch it to the customer, you can say, look, this inverter, it's going to simplify your interconnection equipment. Other companies, they'll have a whole external box for interconnection equipment. This, you can hook up an EV charger to it, you can hook up a generator to it. And we're not talking about small generators and small EV chargers and small solar. We're talking about, 80 amps continuous, 100 amp port rating, not to exceed. One common problem that solves that I see installers encountering in the field all the time is outdoor service panels. So they say, well, I have a meter combo panel, and while my main panel is inside, I still want to provide backup power to my outdoor circuits. It's like, okay, well, just put in a 100 amp sub and land that 100 amp sub on this GIN port, and bring your outdoor circuits onto that sub. You kind of get rid of the meter combo aspect. But that way, all the outdoor circuits can stay outside, and all the indoor circuits can stay inside, and they all get access to backup power. And so that GIN port provides a lot of flexibility, whether the client has an EV on site or existing solar, or they want to incorporate generators. And we do include the generator controls, both for residential and commercial. Or some other weird interconnection challenge that you have, that GIN port can be very useful in providing design flexibility. Again, we have the full grid access, the 200 amp grid pass through, the auto disconnecting grid relay. Some of those features you expect on a residential project, but they vanish when you go into CNI. And so the grid relay is extra. All right. Well, now the grid control software is extra. Oh, okay. Well, now, your solar is, you can't do any DC coupling at all. you have to do AC coupling. Okay, well, your AC coupling has to be smaller than the size of the PCS that's backing up the building. You run into all this complicated design. All of these values and features carry through into our commercial product line. So last but not least, we have the main service panel and load control. And we've been working on this product for quite some time as well. It's looking like a Q4 launch date, but that's our SL14 load controller. And we'll talk more on that in a minute. But the key takeaway here is for 15 kilowatts of backup power, what we deliver in one inverter, which is the 15 kilowatts by day, 12 kilowatts by night, which is the grid interconnection and 200 amp grid pass through, and the ability to AC couple or DC couple existing solar onto one inverter. Normally, to get that much power and functionality, you have to install multiple boxes on the wall. So here's some competitor photos where that 200 amp grid pass through and GIN port is on its own box next to the battery inverter. And then you have the interconnection for the solar going into that additional box. And then you have a whole bunch of 5 kilowatt or 7 kilowatt battery inverters, sometimes with the batteries, sometimes not. They're these big, heavy 400-pound boxes that, sometimes the wall isn't even structurally capable for the weight that's supposed to go on it. At the end of the day, your install crew is having to install 4 or 5 boxes for what is just contained in one Sol Ark inverter, maybe with the battery standing next to it. So the installs go much faster with with Sol Ark, and because all of the controls and communication are built into one unit and not trying to relay signals from unit to unit to unit, the communication and signaling and response time, in fact, the whole system just works more elegantly. And so I didn't have any Endure pictures. We saw some earlier on in the presentation, but you can see how the inverter wall is dramatically simplified to just the inverter on the wall, your grid, knife switch disconnects often required by the utility. So you put the inverter on the wall, your knife switch disconnect, and the battery right next to it, and that's as simple as the project goes. So our load control, if you're not already sold on Sol Ark simplicity, the load control aspect is really going to be what puts you over the edge. It says, all right, I'm going to Sol Ark with all my fleet. And the reason is, load control is important. There's a debate on if you need a lot of load control or a little bit of load control. And, I would say, primarily you have most of your loads inside your house. So if you have your load controller built in your gateway outside the house and your loads are inside the house, you have to take all those indoor loads outside and then back inside to intercept them and control them. Because there's not a lot of affordable load control options on the market right now, I don't think we fully appreciate where load control will take the market. One very important item to California is these grid export incentives in September that are from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. But you only get those incentives by selling back to the grid. And what's between the grid and your battery bank? Well, your electric load. And so, with net metering 3.0 out in California, load control is essential because not only do you have to sell the battery back, but you also have to reduce your load as much as possible. And that might mean just programming the air conditioner not to work as hard from 6 to 8, But in other ways, it might be putting, the safety bumpers into your bowling alley so that you don't go off track. It's putting the laundry on load control so that you don't accidentally run laundry during peak times when you shouldn't. It's reminding, your kid that in September from 6 to 8 p.m. he can't be playing Xbox. He has to go outside or go over to his friend's house or something, because that's the time when you make your money. And furthermore, a 15 kilowatt inverter, with a 200 amp pass through, for your typical customer who might only lose power once a year or even less, they don't want to spend the money of an off-grid system, but they still need reliable electricity when that power outage does in fact happen. And if they're not practiced in living off-grid, the immediate reaction is, well, they just run their air conditioner. Their air conditioner drains their battery all the way down to zero, and then they have unreliable electricity again. What the SL14 will do is selectively load shed. So the lower your battery gets into state of charge, it'll say, well, we really wanted you to have whole home backup with no sacrifice, but we can't run all of your air conditioners at the same time. So we're only going to back up one of them. You'll have to log in your app and selectively enable the others. Well, okay, now your battery's at 50%. And so since your battery's at 50%, we're going to take out your air conditioner so that your lights and fans and food in the fridge stay on. Well, okay, maybe, you've gone 3 or 4 days without sun, and this disaster isn't clearing out, and you've decided, well, yeah, I got to leave. I got to leave the house. Well, you don't know how many days it's going to be until the sun comes back out. And what the load control will do is the very last load that it'll cut out is your refrigerator and freezer, so that you can leave the house and know definitively that you don't have to take, Beverly Hillbilly style, the whole kitchen sink with you when you leave house during that disaster. And so load control is a lot more than just making sure that your loads don't exceed the inverter power capacity. It'll allow larger homes to have satisfaction with their systems when those unplanned power outages do in fact get used. And then it'll also help the home stay within their battery incentives and virtual power plant events and real-time electricity pricing and residential demand charges. And as loopy as what we're in for electric rate billing billing structures into the future, the SL14, it powers enough loads in order for you to accommodate any of those diverse applications. So it does 14 loads. You don't have to worry about if one's 20 amp and one's 40 amp and the other's 60 amp. They're all the same size. They're all 100 amps, 100 amp each. Parallel stackable. So you can parallel communicate up to 8 of these things. Well, why on earth would you ever need to do that? Well, for 208 3-phase. So the same load controller that you can use for residential, you can also use for 208 3-phase facilities and get into demand management and energy services for that as well. So it's coming soon. It's in field testing. It will likely be available for widespread availability in the fourth quarter of this year. And just with net metering 3.0 in California, that's going to make Sol Ark the most cost-effective net metering 3.0 solution on the market. And as those policies get rolled out to the rest of the country, at least by this time next year, load control will be an essential component for solar battery design, and we'll have that in our platform. So the optimizers are probably being pushed out until 2024. Last thing you want to do as a solar installer is get back up on the rooftop and do replacement. And so we have to be a little bit more cautious and careful launching this as a new product. So at least we're taking our time with it to make sure that it's right at launch. And there's some unique values of this, but given that we have a number of webinars to do before it comes out, I'll just keep them in the handout. So last but not least, where can you go to get copies of slides? Well, you're already in the Sol Ark training portal. So I do need to go and get Endure slides from them, and come back into the Sol Ark training video into this class as an on-demand webinar. Get access to the recording and the handouts and ask any follow-up questions.
And we will also be including an on-demand recording of today's Soligent Storage Series webinar with Sol Ark and EndurEnergy at the Soligent YouTube channel, folks. And if you have any questions, please email me directly, storage@soligent.net. We are the one-stop shop for solar energy storage and all your needs.
Key takeaways: if you want thin profile battery cabinet options that are UL listed and have prepper mindset features, Endure is great for that. If you want a battery partner that has kind of Sol Ark looking over their shoulder with some shared warehousing and office operations, Endure is great for that. If you want one battery partner that you can use with high voltage and low voltage, Endure is great for that, with one battery that can do both.
Thanks, everyone. And John Cromer from Sol Ark, Nolan Granzin from EndurEnergy Battery. Sol Ark and EndurEnergy available at Soligent. Find out more, click on the link below. This recording on demand is going to be available shortly at the Soligent YouTube channel. And if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one training, get connected with the Soligent rep to get a quote for Sol Ark Solutions and EndurEnergy Solutions. Email me today. I'm Josh Brum, Energy Storage Manager here at Soligent. Email me today, storage@soligent.net. That's storage@soligent.net. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, John. Thanks, Nolan.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.